ACC reported that in 2013, just under a quarter of agriculture, forestry, and fishery workers had a work related injury claim. Dairy farmer and Federated Farmers Taranaki president Bronwyn Muir and her husband Phil began a farm safety consultancy business to help farmers identify, address, and reduce risks on their properties to prevent injury.
The business is about supporting farmers in their own environment, on their own farms, to get their health and safety systems to an active, compliant point and keep them that way. Our focus has been to get on farm with farmers and their staff every month for as long as they need us, and just answer all those questions around those grey areas around legislation or regulation, and how it's supposed to work for individual farmers and for our farming industry. My husband and I are farming, and from an industry perspective we could see that there was going to be huge need in this area. I'm also president for Federated Farmers in Taranaki and actively involved at that level, plus the Rural Support Trust. So having lots of conversations with lots of farmers around everything, including compliance and health and safety in particular. The biggest issue for farmers was that they just didn't know where to start to get a system in place, and to a point that everybody was doing their part, employers and employees, and working together to actually have a system that was sustainable and doable, because from the outset it looks like it's just going to bog them down with more and more paperwork. So we've tried to create a system that's really simple. Just the whole scope of the system is taken into account. I think it's the fear, almost the threat of being prosecuted or fined if they don't. And we've tried to take a different approach from our business perspective and say, okay, that's the butt covering side of what we're doing here, but actually if you do this and do it really well, there's some really good productive spin-offs that could be had here. And we're seeing that with a lot of our clients. At first there's a bit of pushback on why do we have to do it? Do we have to wear our helmets? All the questions around how are we actually being regulated, what rules and regulations are being used to get us to a compliance point, and in fact, what does compliance even look like? Because that's not clearly explained by the regulators at this stage. So we go through the whole system with them and demystify what is otherwise could be quite confusing, a lot of grey patches.
Okay. I just recommend fencing that area off, either that or capping it, so you've got your mesh.
Most farmers that we work with are taking as reasonably practicable the steps that they see are going to keep themselves and their staff healthy and safe. But in the event that something did happen, they wouldn't be able to show that in a documented form, because our industry is all very verbal and practical. We're doers. And so to take that now and say, okay, that's all great, but you have to be able to show it on paper, is the next step. And it's a matter of how do we get it on paper. Quad bikes are in the spotlight right now. They're the focal point around health and safety, whether it be the use of them, the carrying of passengers, the wearing of helmets, and we tend to get hit with that as soon as we come on farm. So you're here to make me wear my helmet. That's just one tool in the toolbox. There's a whole discussion, an industry discussion that has to be had, and we're trying to encourage that discussion with the owners of the land first. Get the owners and the managers, the middle management, whether they be share milkers or contract milkers, to have a good, productive discussion about who's responsible here for health and safety, how is it going to work, what are the rules, do you have a policy? You're getting your staff, if you're signing off in your employment contracts, those staff are agreeing to abide by a health and safety policy, which most farm businesses don't have. So we've got to start there and develop a policy.
Do you have certain rules that you tell your staff as far as handling stock?
Yep. So we just make sure that everything's done quietly, especially when they're moving.
2 years into it, we've got 8 staff out there around New Zealand now, and just looking at bringing on some more staff. Our focal point is starting to really concentrate on status of farm businesses around their health and safety. So we audit farmers and we give them then a start point, a document that they can share with the governors of their business, their directors. They can have on the table with staff if they need to say, prepares a to-do list and action list around what we need to do to get our health and safety system to a compliance status. We're at Surrey Road, Tariki in Taranaki. We're on our second property. I guess it's a test property for us to tweak our systems, use them with our systems and our staff and make sure that we're getting it right.
On this farm, we don't live here, so this farm has a share milker on it, and then the share milker employs their own staff for day-to-day running of the farm. So recording is very crucial to us as owners, so we know if there are any accidents or injuries, plus also identifying hazards so that we can actually put some corrective actions in place to either minimise or completely get rid of whatever those issues were. We do some monthly recording, so if Carl has any issues on the farm, it's recorded to us. That's just as simple as an email. Earlier on, when we first came, we were doing it weekly. We sort of ironed out any issues that were there, and now we've moved that back to monthly. So it's just another means of communication.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.